What is up, Jerk Squad? Today I'm going to show you guys how to turn your tails into trophies. I'm currently over here at Surgical Master Chris's house, and as you can see in the background, he's already got some tails that he's already made into trophies. Chris is one of my best friends from lbsfguides.com. He can take you on a shark fishing chart if you want to, and he's going to help walk us through this method today and show you everything he does, all of the steps, and we're going to show you samples from start to finish. What up, Chris?
Welcome to my house.
This is Chris's workstation right here. He's got all of his tools. He's got leopard shark tail and leopard shark fins. What he's gonna do is show us the process on turning these tails into trophies.
So here's some of the tools that we're gonna use. We got some really sharp fillet knives. We got the Victory Knock. And then these are actually pottery tools from Michael's. You can get some for taxidermy as well that are a little more sturdy, but these have been doing great. We got an assortment of pliers for breaking bones and ripping out cartilage. These are just small tools that I got from like an electrical tool kit, various different cutters and pliers, knife sharpener because your knife's gonna get dull, rubber gloves if you don't want to get dirty, razor knives. We have a scribble print leopard shark here. It's what one of our clients caught this past weekend. He wanted to make it into a trophy for his son. Now, I couldn't get to it right away. What I did to preserve it is I put it in salt water and put it in the refrigerator, very cold. Stayed nice and preserved, and now we can get started.
All right, let's grab it. Damn, this thing looks wild. That's so cool. Look at the print on this, you guys. That is beautiful.
Nice.
Wow. First thing you're going to want to do is pat it dry.
It just really makes it easier to handle so your hands aren't wet and cold. First thing I probably should have done is put my rubber gloves on, but
Surgical Master Chris is about to operate.
I want to put epoxy in it and make it like a paper holder, like a weight, so I can set it on my desk like that.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah. I've never done that before, so that'll be a new one.
That'll be cool.
We got the backbone going straight through the middle. Then there's a piece of cartilage that goes up to the top and a piece of cartilage that goes down to the bottom, and that's connecting it into the skin. So the trick is to get that hollowed out without cutting through the skin. It's best to use sharp knives. That way you don't have to put a lot of pressure on it. You just kind of follow it down so like I can see kind of where my blade is, but it's cutting blind for the most part.
Oh yeah, I could see where you'd have to be careful, make sure you don't cut through the skin.
Yeah, and if you do, it's not the end of the world because the epoxy will seal it up. You just don't want to have a big gash in it.
About how far deep into the tail do you think you're putting the tip of that knife?
As far as you can. With the leopards, it's a little easier, so I'm probably going about up to there. It all depends on where you can break the cartilage and get it all out. The goal is to get as much meat out as you possibly can.
Now you guys can do this taxidermy process, whatever you want to call it. You can do this to any tail for any fish you catch. So if you catch a yellow tail, cut that tail off, bring it home, and you can straight make it into a trophy. There's a lot of stuff to do, so we brought in some extra help today. We got Ellie to help us out.
So I cut all the way around. The hardest part's on the top because there's cartilage attached up here, and then on the bottom there's cartilage there. So you got to be really careful when you're cutting with the knife, and you just got to kind of work it saw back and forth and get cut through that cartilage. I made it up to about here in the tail, so I'm gonna break the tail.
Ooh, ooh! You're just grabbing the middle of the bone there.
Yep.
Ooh, giving it,
twisting it around.
Woohoo! Look at that. What's that remind you guys of?
And then there's the empty meat pocket.
There it is, you guys. What's that remind you of?
In the beginning, I think I forgot to mention one of the main things that you're gonna need, and that's borax. So what this is it's it says it's a detergent, and you'll find it at like Ralph's in the laundry detergent section. But it's an acid that'll help eat away the meat on the inside when it dries, and it also helps with like odor control. Careful not to get on the outside, and we're just gonna fill the little meat pocket up with some borax.
All right, borax in the meat pocket. You heard the man.
So now we're gonna work it all down inside. And we're just trying to get a nice thin coating of that borax on the meat on the inside. And then take your garbage can and just dump out all the extra. And now at this point, you have a decision to make.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so with like tuna tails, and like you could with a smaller shark like this one, you can have it either mounted on the wall, or if you want to mount it into like a rock or something else, have it staying up like that. If you're gonna mount it on the wall, I found it best to keep it flat like it is and just dry it as is here. If you're going to mount it onto something so it's sticking up, then what you do is you get expanding foam from like Home Depot, and you spray your expanding foam in there, and so that it kind of fills the void where the meat was, and then that gives you something to mount a bolt to or a screw when you go to attach it to whatever you're going to mount it to. So for this one, we're just going to hang it on the wall. So we're just going to leave it as is. And now it's ready for the drying box.
We are in Chris's garage right now, and this is his box that he made, homemade. It looks like from some PVC piping and some plastic wrap. What you got here, Chris?
So when I first started doing this, I just used cardboard boxes, and I'd put a PET filter on the end of it and just blow air through it using a computer fan. I put the PET filter on to kind of get rid of some of the smell because I live in an apartment complex and people don't like that. So then I came up with the idea to make this after doing a ton of tails so that I don't have to keep making new boxes. And this is completely self-contained, so there's no odor, so none of my neighbors complain. And what it is it's a humidity controlled box, or kind of humidity controlled. So I put a humidity sensor in here, and inside we have a computer fan that's just making the air move, and then we have a dehumidifier. So the dehumidifier is actually sucking the water out of the air so that more of the moisture can come out of the tails. So I didn't have the dehumidifier before, so it's the first run with the dehumidifier, and it's taking a ton of water out. So I'm very hopeful that this is a new trick that's going to speed up this process and create higher quality tails.
All right, you guys, you got the enclosed box. You can use any size you want to. You can go smaller, bigger. You can use a plastic box, whatever you want. You got your humidity gauge, dehumidifier, and a fan in there to blow the air around. That's all you need.
So I'm going to unplug the fan and the dehumidifier just so nothing gets jarred while we're working on stuff. And I already have a soup fin tail in there and 2 thresher tails.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so those are currently drying. And so now we're going to add the leopard shark tail. So in order to create space, I have a little shelf thing I'm going to drop in. Alright, so we're going to take the tail. I'm going to take some pieces of cardboard, tear them lengthwise, just so I can put it on the edges of the fins so that they don't fold up as they dry.
Yeah, if you let these dry without something covering it, the actual ends of the tail will kind of curl up a little bit.
I'm just going to set a little piece of wood on there to hold it all down. And then we're just going to slide that in on the shelf.
The tail is held down with a little bit of weight. It's chilling inside the box. It's ready to dry out.
There we go.
Is there a certain humidity that you want to keep it at? I see it's at 52% right now.
As low as possible, so I just run the dehumidifier all the time so that it's just sucking as much of the moisture out as it can. It says that in the instruction manual that the dehumidifier works best at 80 degrees, and it just so happens that the box is hanging out at about 81 degrees. When I first put the tails in, it was like at 70% humidity, 80% humidity, so it was a very moist, warm environment, and as it gets more and more dry, the percentage gets lower. At some point, I'm guessing I'll be able to figure out what percentage means the tails are done. But for now, I'm just trying to keep it as low as possible.
All right.
And it'll be in here for a couple of weeks. So it'll sit out here. I'll probably rotate it in like a week or so, and then maybe again a week after that. So between 2 to 4 weeks for a leopard tail. The thresher tail, because you can't get as much meat out, it's going to take longer, about a month usually. And then up next, after it gets all dried, is the epoxy process.
Do you have any rule of thumb for when the tail is done? Like if it doesn't flex at all, or if you squeeze it and it's not moving, or
I'm kind of learning still, so I just look at it, and if there's any damp parts, like, or if it looks like there's any moisture in it still, I leave it. I'd rather have it completely dry than not dry enough. So if there's any question about it being not dry enough, I'll leave it in for another week or so. There's no harm in letting it go for too long.
All right, there you guys go, moist and warm. If you guys want to see a video on how to catch a leopard shark and all of the rigs that we use to catch that leopard shark and the bait and everything, I'll leave the video up here. You guys can go watch it and learn a bunch of stuff. Once your tail is dry from the box, you're going to bring it inside. Now, this is a thresher shark tail right here that Chris has been working on, and this already has 1 layer of epoxy on it, and we're going to show you guys, he's going to put a 2nd layer on there, and we're going to show you guys how to do this. And how many layers would you say you put on a tail total?
2 usually. So I usually put the first coat on, let it dry really nice, and at first it'll take a lot of epoxy on the first coat. Not a lot, but enough to cover it completely. And then the second coat is a little bit thinner.
What you're going to want to do is suspend the tail in the air with the meat side up, so that way as you put the epoxy on, it can all drip off. What are the ingredients we need today, Chris?
Alrighty, so the trick is the pigments and glitter. So I went to Ulta Beauty, and I have an account there. Yeah.
How cute, Chris.
They keep thinking I'm buying for my girlfriend. I'm single. These are pigments, and these are glitters. So for the leopard sharks, I like using browns. For threshers, I like using the silvers. And so when you dry a tail, it looks kind of dull. I mean, even after you catch it, it's only like shimmering in the sun for a few minutes before it kind of loses its color. And so these glitters and pigments kind of give it that shimmer back, so that when it's hanging on your wall and people are looking at it, it looks like you just pulled it out of the water almost, especially when like the sun's hitting it. It just adds a little sparkle to it. It catches your eye again. All right, so we got our glitters, and we have a little mixing bowl for the glitters so that I can get the color before I put it in the epoxy. We got ourselves a little bucket that we're gonna put the epoxy in, a little brush to put the epoxy on the tail. I used to use bristle brushes, like basting brushes. Bristles would fall off and end up in the tail, and I'd have to pick out the little bristles. And so now I just use these foam ones, and they work way better. Then I have the epoxy, so a 2-part epoxy. I picked this up at Home Depot. Or these ones are at Lowe's, the glaze coat.
Yeah, you guys just make sure you pick any 2 epoxies that mix together that make a clear epoxy. You want it to be clear.
Yeah, clear. And so these are the ones that they use for like tables. Like if you put a bunch of pennies on a table and you want to epoxy over it. So it's a very thick epoxy, and it's flexible so that, you know, a little bend isn't going to crack it. We got the heat gun to get everything down, a little mixing spoon, and then the measuring cup. We're ready to roll. So we're going to mix up some of the pigments and glitter. So I'm going to take the silver. Now, a little bit goes a long way. So
now, can you use the epoxy without any glitters?
You can, but then it'll just look a little more dull.
Okay.
I mean, I don't recommend it. With the tuna tails, sometimes I even paint them before putting epoxy on them. So you can get creative too. You could tie-dye this tail, and you could have some cool artistic shark tail instead of just your run-of-the-mill design.
That would be pretty sweet. Have an LGBTQ tail going too.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's just a little bit, so just enough to get in there a little.
All right.
And then,
oh yeah, that is a little tiny bit.
So that's the pigment, and then I'm going to use some of this glitter. The pigments and the glitters also hide any like imperfections, like if any of the skin is scratched and stuff. I'm going to use a little bit of the brown pigments because, I mean, looking at the tails, there are some browns in there. So, I mean, even less than what I used of the silver. And so for the entire tail, I mean, that's all you're looking at is just that little bit. And I like to use it a 1/4 cup at a time. Now with a leopard tail, it's much smaller, so you can get away with even like a couple of tablespoons at a time. I used to mix like half the thing and then I'd throw a bunch away. And this stuff's expensive. I mean, you're looking at $30 for just that. So I'm going to do a 1/4 cup here. Don't use your mom's good measuring cups for this. She'll kill you.
Use your parents' best measuring cups to make sure it's the best measurement.
And now this stuff, it's 50-50 mix. It's not going to be better if you put more hardener in or more resin. It's made to be 50-50. Make it 50-50 as I pour it over.
And this is what he's using, guys. This is VENMO wood glaze coat. You'll have 2 bottles of this. One will be for mixing. The other one will be the hardener.
Yep, one's resin, one's hardener. And I'm just going to rinse out my measuring cup real quick so this doesn't wreck my measuring cup so I can use it again next time. Okay, so when you wash off your utensils, make sure you use paper towel and get the epoxy off first before you just throw it in your sink, and don't leave it sit in the bottom of your sink, otherwise you're going to epoxy your stuff to your sink. And don't leave globs of epoxy in the sink, because then you'll end up like my sink, and that's a mess. And so the epoxy now, I only took a second to go rinse stuff out, and you want to mix this stuff really good. So you're going to be mixing this for probably about 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah, if you read the directions, I think it says 5 minutes, and then change containers and do it another 5 minutes. I've never changed containers. I don't know if that's maybe if you're mixing the whole bottle, but I've never had any problems just using a single container and just mixing it for about 5 minutes. You do have to be careful if you are mixing all of it, because there's I think it's called an exothermic reaction. So it gets really hot, and your epoxy will actually start smoking.
Oh, snap.
I don't know if it can actually catch on fire. I haven't let it get to that point, but it's definitely started smoking on me before. Like if you're not stirring it and you're just letting it sit there. So
Yeah.
It's interesting stuff.
Keep stirring. That's what we want to see. Fire!
Yeah. Oh, and then we're going to take the glitter and the pigments. Just tap, tap.
Yeah, let's see what that looks
You'll
like.
see that epoxy go from like a clear to kind of a silvery-ish color now. I'm going to take my little sponge brush. I'm just going to start at the top and work my way down.
All right, time to sponge. Sponge the epoxy. There you go.
You want to make sure you get all the meat pieces covered because otherwise it'll smell bad. If there's any holes, just fill it in. If you don't have foam in it, like this one does, then you just keep pouring the epoxy into the tail and just fill the entire hole at the top.
And this is the second coat, right?
Yep. But it's exactly the same as the first. I do the same mix of pigments and glitter.
And then you do what, about 2 coats total?
Yep. I don't think I've ever had to do 3, but I've never done only 1. Because when it dries, some of the edges like here open up a little bit. So you just want to make sure you're getting everything nice and covered.
And you guys could probably go a little bit thicker up top because the epoxy's probably going to run down the tail a little bit.
It's gonna come down a lot because once I get all of this on, we're gonna hit it with a heat gun.
What does the heat gun do for the epoxy?
It liquefies it even more. So I think it gets it into like all the little crevices and like the tail, like right here. You just have to not overdo it so you don't cook the tail and so that you don't make all the epoxy run off.
Right, right. It's Jaws! Let's go! But yeah, you guys, the main part of this process is getting your tail dried out. And you want to air dry it, you know, throw it in the box with a dehumidifier. And then after that, you just cover it in epoxy and let it dry. That's honestly all you have to do with these tails. But you want to do it in a way so it doesn't smell horribly. You want to get them drying as soon as possible.
So now we're going to hit it with the heat gun on low setting. And we're just going to go through just real lightly. Let the gun warm up. I'm just going to go right down the tail.
And if you heat it up too much, you guys, all of the epoxy will run off. So you just want to get it warm. Like how long would you say you hold it on each spot? Maybe like a couple seconds?
I'm just kind of running it by. Not even a couple seconds. You can see the epoxy starting to liquefy more.
Yeah, look at that. That'll look so pretty on the wall.
And that's after coating both sides. And you're going to get these little bubbles here on the tips. You can use like pliers or like a wire cutters at the end to just go through and just snip those off. They're not going to look that visible. Just make sure you don't snip down to the meat because then you're going to have exposed meat and it's going to smell bad. This also gets rid of all the little air bubbles.
I'm going to try to get a close shot, but you guys can kind of see the glitter in there. The glitter gives it a nice little sparkle. It actually looks really cool. Yeah, look at that tail.
Then you just let it sit here and dry, and in about 24 hours, it's ready to hang on the wall.
All right, there you guys go, from tail to trophy out here with Chris from lbsfguides.com.
Come on out with us.
Check out this tail. This is a leopard shark tail that Chris already has finished. And as you can see, it is nice and epoxied. It's nice and clear. And then you can take these and you can hang them on the wall if you want. You can mount it to something like a rock or something upside down. And this is how they'll look when they're done. It's really sweet looking. This is Chris's wall of shark tails. Check this out. What are all these, Chris?
These are all the different shark tails that I've gotten over the last couple of years. So this one's a mako. We were out fishing for tuna, and he was actually swimming up and eating the tuna as we were getting him off. So we ended up catching the mako. He tasted great. Over on the top is my first Sevengill Shark. So that one, when we pulled it in, we had a huge kelp island and we didn't even know the shark was on. And so by the time we got it in, it was already dead. So we kept it and ate it. And then this is the second Sevengill we got. That one we ate as well. And then the soup fin I got over at Cabrillo, casting from land. Got him earlier this year.
On the casted gear.
Yeah, and the big jaws are from the Sevengill on top. And yeah, so when we catch these sharks, all these tails on here, I have a vacuum sealer. All the meat goes in my freezer. We share it with friends, family, coworkers. None of the shark goes to waste. We use the jaws, we can use the tails, we use all the meat. Every now and then there's people out on the pier that want the fins, so we'll give those away too. I'm gonna work on taxidermy and some fins as like paperweights, see how that turns out. So when we catch a shark and we harvest it, nothing goes to waste. We use everything that comes out of the shark.
And most of these sharks that they keep and eat, something usually happens to where you can't release the shark. Like if you gut hook a shark or the shark is dead when you go to release it, that's usually when they're keeping these sharks. They don't kill every shark they catch. Probably almost every single shark they catch, they try to release it because...
About 95%, if not more, of the sharks we catch, we release.
Exactly. So, you know, they're not out here slaughtering sharks. It's just some cases you keep the shark, you know, for meat, which is part of the sport, you know, but 95% of these sharks, they're releasing them. So we like to keep the sharks safe. Some of them you keep. And there you have it, Jerk Squad. Now you guys can make your own trophies with your yellowtail, your tuna tails, all kinds of tails, surf perch tails. Dude, hang like 100 of them on your wall. That'll look sweet. Please go down to the link in the description and cop some perch merch. You already know what it is. Subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask of you guys. And stay tuned because you already know there's going to be tons and tons more fishing content coming this summer. I'm going to focus on teaching you guys as much as I possibly can. All right, me and Chris are out, you guys. We're going to finish this tail and we're going to cook up some thresher shark steaks. So stay tuned for that video. It's going to be amazing. All right, Jerk Squad, we out.
Dead sharks have no tails.
All right, peace.